Who all here, raise your hand, deals with a thyroid issue? How many of you have had a thyroid issue? You went in because you started to feel and have issues, hair loss, fatigue, maybe irritability, had menstrual cycle issues. You had a lot of these symptoms of thyroid issues. You went into your doctor and you told them your issues, and then they did some tests, probably did your TSH, did your T4, TPO actually. Now you went to probably more of a holistic then, didn't you? Or did you have a standard medical physician doing it? And that's usually that we get TSH, T4, and if you look at like Mayo Clinic online, different places, their standard for diagnosing somebody with hypothyroidism is pretty much just TSH levels, and then occasionally T4 levels. Occasionally you get more naturally minded, a little bit of T3, and then you'll get the TPO, the antibody levels, those types of things. How many of you have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, given the medication, but yet, this is a long question, but then you took the medication and you're like, yeah, it didn't really change my life. That wasn't the answer I was looking for. So raise the hands if it was like the medication didn't really resolve all the issues that you were dealing with. So quite a few of you. And that's the reality, is because the medication, you'll learn, is only going to fix one issue, which is not the primary issue why so many women, primarily women, men can too, but it's a lot less frequently that men will deal with thyroid issues, but why so many women will take the thyroid medication, be diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and it's not really a thyroid issue. It could be a hormone issue involving the thyroid hormones, but it's not the organ itself. And it's not the lack of the hormone, it's conversion, or it's the body's attacking it, it's the inflammation there, inhibiting the cell receptors from attaching and being able to bind up with that hormone to do and trigger the cellular responses, the metabolism responses, those types of things that the body needs to do. Right. So you got to look at where in the link or where in the chain is your link weak. Right. So this is kind of an example. These are antibodies, so these are the things that are outer ranges, vitamin D, and then your thyroid antibodies, okay, TPO and others. And then, but if you look, because again, the majority of people will get, how many of you had like a complete panel done? How many of you know what a complete panel would be? Throw me out some numbers and say, this is what I got. What were some of the numbers? What did you get tested?
Since I've been tested, but the last time I was tested, my TSH was like 400s.
400s?
Yeah.
Your body was really trying to tell your thyroid to put it.
High as well.
Yep.
I've never been within a normal range since I was 17 years old, so always on the high spectrum.
Yeah.
400s, 200s. I had one occasion where I dropped way low, so they thought I had gone hyper, but it just turns out it was...
So your TSH dropped way low.
Yeah.
So a lot of your determination was going off of TSH.
Correct.
And that's what will typically happen. So basically it sounded like 3 hormones, T4 probably, T3, TSH. Did I hear that right?
Something free is what it is.
Free.
Yeah, but I don't...
So free T3 is usually what they test for there. So if you look here in this lab testing, if you look at it, her levels, if they're just going to go off of what is typically done in the medical physician's office and is typical for, even if you go on the Mayo Clinic, you go on endocrinology websites, you'll learn that they diagnose hypothyroidism by TSH typically, a T4, and maybe a T3. Okay? The standard is using TSH. What organ produces TSH, though? Anybody want to take a guess? Yes, it is. So think about this. They diagnose, for the majority of people, they will diagnose hypothyroidism off of a test of another organ. Does that make a lot of sense to anybody?
No.
When you want to know what is the organ that you're telling me isn't working right, how is it working? Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, granted, a TSH number can give you an idea of how well the thyroid is working because there's feedback loops, and the pituitary will send out more TSH when the body is not getting an adequate supply of thyroid hormone. So it will be a feedback loop that can tell you sometimes when the body's not doing what it needs to do. So it's trying to produce more of that thyroid hormone for proper regulation of the systems of your body. But in this example, you're going to see that if we just took those numbers typically, and again, like free T4 and TSH, they're within normal ranges. So this person, if tested, could be seeing weight gain, hair loss, irritability, irregular cycles, could be having a lot of the symptoms and issues that lower quality of life, go in and get those tests there, the standards, and then be told there's nothing wrong with your thyroid. How frustrating is that? Because then people always make the joke, well, it's maybe it's your diet, maybe you just need to exercise more. I see a lot of head shaking, a lot of heard a lot of that, it's all your fault, right? Yeah. And then we look, well, looking at like Beverly, luckily had it and get a diagnosis of, hey, your thyroid antibodies are off. So your body's immune system is attacking the production of those thyroid hormones. So normal TSH, you're fine. I think we've already talked about that a little bit. So I may like jump around. I'm very like, I was diagnosed with ADD, ADHD in back in school. So I'm very much like, I'll talk ahead of myself and then learn that, oh yeah, I had a slide where I was supposed to talk about that to rhyming. And then we might not talk about it. But so, yeah, you feel awful, yet you're diagnosed with nothing's wrong. It's all in your head. I think I've heard that type of a scenario for many. Thyroid TSH isn't even a thyroid hormone. So, but again, and that causes even more stress. So ultimately, a lot of people will go to their doctors and say, hey, I have these issues, I have these health problems, I want help with them. They go and they do testing, they do inadequate testing, and then they get told that there's nothing wrong, but then they can't figure out what's wrong. And how many were stressed leaving the office saying, where do I go now? What do I do now to find answers? And that ultimately sends people down an even further, path to worsening health. So we need to do complete labs. That's probably one of the biggest things that I want people to understand. Like if you're really wanting to know how well your thyroid is functioning or what is causing quote unquote hypothyroidism or this hormone dysregulation, you have to do complete labs. So T4, T3, reverse T3, there's T2 and there's T1. Raise your hands if you knew there was T2 and T1. No. So there's other ones. And the reality is when you look in the science, it's very hard to figure out what is even the T2 and T1 do. I don't even know. It may just be precursors to T3 and T4, and we'll talk about the production of how your body actually produces those things. So how can Synthroid replace all that? Because what is Synthroid? Does anybody know what Synthroid is itself in terms of hormones? It is strictly a synthetic T4. That is it. That is it. It's just T4. So ultimately, if the body's not producing these other hormones, it's not converting T4 into T3, the thyroid will produce T3. And we're going to talk kind of primarily of T3 and T4, since that's where we know scientifically what those hormones do in our body, how they help with regulation and metabolism and those things. But if we just supply T4, we're really only going to fix what is a production issue. And that's it, just being able. But if there's a conversion issue from T4 into T3, if the problem is in the conversion process, that T4 will not fix it. If T4 is given synthetically and you have Hashimoto's, it's not fixing it, and it's not really taking stress off the thyroid either, okay? And there are some serious problems with using that. That's one of the things I address very, very quickly with most of my patients that are on T4. As I say, it's important now to get proper labs so that you're not at risk, and you'll learn one of those big risks here in just a second. So here are some of the symptoms of hypothyroidism, or thyroid dysfunction, as I'd rather call it than hypo, because it's not just low production, which is typically, that's what the scientific term hypothyroidism means, less function of your thyroid, okay? So irregular heartbeat, chest pains, muscle weakness, nervousness, irritability, sleeplessness, tremors, change in appetite, change in weight, hair loss, sweating, impaired fertility, decreased bone density, changes in menstrual cycles, leg cramps, headaches, and I love like other unusual medical events because they're just like, we don't really know what's going on. Now let's look at the side effects of thyroid medication. Oh wait, did I do something? Hang on. Oh no, they actually are the same. Literally look it up. Yeah, I was head shaking, yes. Literally, if you look up the symptoms of hypothyroidism and then you look on Synthroid's website, the drug data, and you look at the side effects of the medication, they literally list every single symptom that is involved in diagnosing somebody by symptom checklist with hypothyroidism. because you'll learn that synthetic hormone can also cause oxidative stress, which inflammation and oxidative stress, tissue damage can lead to all those issues. So all these issues in this list here doesn't always indicate hypothyroidism, doesn't always indicate thyroid dysfunction. It can indicate your body's too inflamed, that your body's dealing with other stressors. So a lot of these illnesses, to me, irregular heartbeat, well, the nerves in your neck and the lower part of your neck or the upper back go to both the thyroid and to the heart, to the chest, shortness of breath, rapid breathing, you know, those types of things. So probably one of the biggest things that people should know right away, let me ask, again, I love asking questions because I want to see if it's been done. So let's read this first. Levothyroxine is contraindicated. What does contraindicated mean?
Doesn't work with what you're taking.
Doesn't work with it, or it shouldn't be given.
Right.
So, in patients with untreated subclinical expressed serum TSH level with normal T3, T4 levels is what is diagnosed, or overt thyrotoxicosis of any etiology, and in patients, so how many people have actually looked for toxicosis in there? Any etiology in patients with acute myocardial infarction, or levothyroxine is contraindicated in patients with uncorrected insufficiency, since thyroid hormones may precipitate an acute renal crisis by increasing metabolic clearance of glucocorticoids, contraindications in patients with hypersensitivity to any of the inactive ingredients.
Wow.
So what about the egg? What about the soy? How many of you had your allergies tested, like food allergies? So the constituents within the thyroid medication, before you went on the thyroid, none of you. So none of you had, like, are you allergic to soy? Are you allergic to some of the ingredients in there? They're supposed to do that. How do you know if you have a contraindication if you don't test for it?
Right.
And then on top of that, how many of you got a adrenal test done before you were placed on the medication?
Well,
you
I
were.
was never actually put on medication.
Okay.
So, no.
But you had an adrenal test, you weren't put on the medication. That's what I mean. So it's literally, here is contraindications. Your doctor should be testing this before they put you on this medication because of the increased stress and metabolic changes. And if the medication, quote unquote, work to increase the metabolism, which should increase heart rate and those types of things, and energy, but then the energy could overflow into a cardiac event because you're already at higher elevated cortisol levels, stress hormones, adrenal hormones. So then the two together work against you. Your body will actually, if there's stress hormones going up, it'll say, okay, thyroid could go down so I can balance the system out before I have a heart attack. So the body's really smart. It can do the right thing in the right moment, then we override it just because we look at one single thing.
Right.
See how we could get in trouble? We should be following the directions that are indicated. Do you follow me?
Yep.
So we always test adrenals, even before we approach things naturally. And this one, I don't know why, it always takes a second to actually upload. There we go, good. So I did an article on this, and this was probably, it was, I think the year that this came out, 2013, because it was early on in practice. And I did an article locally about the use of this medication. I just put it out there saying, hey, did people know that levothyroxine Synthroid could increase the risk of lung cancer? Now, if you read the entire research article, you'll learn that it could be that the underlying factors leading to thyroid dysfunction could also be leading to lung cancer. So it may not be that the medication causes the problem, but we do know excess thyroid hormone increases oxidative stress, increases inflammation, increases tissue damage, and increases through a biological process that I can't even remember, that I've heard experts on this subject speak about, how levothyroxine can affect the lungs specifically. So to me, it makes sense why the lungs are getting hit more than other tissues of the body. But also, again, as a chiropractor and as a person that says, well, if there's a weak point in our spine near the thyroid, and then just below that point, where that area deteriorates as well or is damaged, and then we have weak areas or weak nervous system flow out to the lungs as well, so then there could be 2 in the 1. But this is a big deal. There's a reason. And if you think about it, what is the 2 major thyroid issues? There's 2 of them, and one of them is called a really unique name that was very easy to learn in chiropractic school and talking about health issues. What are the 2 big names for thyroid conditions?
Graves' disease.
Yes. It's actually named after a gentleman by the last name of Graves,
Right.
which in school, I just thought they called it Graves' disease because it kills you, like literally. Like undiagnosed Graves' disease, uncontrolled,
Right.
controlled, which is always cut it out, which the only Graves' disease patient I've ever actually worked with completely went into remission, and she was, I think, 9 years old when I started treating her, had a reverse curvature in her neck. I went to the hospital here locally and adjusted that girl because her father was under care, and the parents were like, okay, before we go tomorrow to have her thyroid cut out, will you come to the hospital and adjust her? And I said, sure. And so I came home. It was actually one of those holiday weekends where I had to take and cancel my Monday. Actually, I drove back to the lake after I adjusted her. But they're going to go have a 9-year-old's thyroid removed because their thyroid hormones were so elevated. It's called Graves' disease. So this is one way to put people in the grave.
Absolutely.
You follow me? So if you don't need this hormone, you should not be on Synthroid. You should not be on this hormone. Because excess oxidative stress and tissue damage will lead to an early grave. This is one manner in that. This is going to add to it. And people need to know this. Do you all agree that the information may be unsettling a little bit? Because I got some people that most everybody here knows me. Knows my personality. I'm very upfront, very outspoken about this type of stuff that I'm like, we should be using this. We should be talking about this. If we know all these different hormones, we should be addressing the underlying root causes so we can help people the best of our ability as physicians. And the people that are supposed to be doing this and who are supposed to be prescribing these medications better be using this. What's funny to me is I wrote this article and I got an ugly email from an endocrinologist at Vanderbilt University saying, how dare I put out such an article? And where did you read that study? So I sent her the study. Reproductive biology and endocrinology. She was an endocrinologist at Vanderbilt University. And I'm like, well, why didn't you read it? Shouldn't you get all the emails from the endocrinology and, you know? So, but ultimately and I do, I say, you know what, if we can show people that, you know what, this medication may lead to some poor or bad outcomes, maybe that will initiate somebody to make a decision to say, you know, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this and figure out whether I really need to be on this medication or not. Because that's a big motivating factor. And I think I heard already one lady say, I think you were saying that it's like, how do I know whether I can come off of this safely? You know, because why are you so afraid to come off of it? What have you been told? But that's a lot of times is like it's scare tactics. It's information that isn't always is founded, but it's like you have to stay on this. You could have this horrible thing, or it's scared my hair will all fall out. So they drive through that. And I don't mean to drive through that, but I think people should. And that's not what I'm attempting to do with that article, that research article. It's just pointing out what I feel everybody should already know. That information should come from all endocrinologists. As soon as that was published, here there's suspicion of this. And then ultimately, what should we be asking, going back to that reconceptualize, re-educating the population on health issues, health problems. If somebody has a dysfunctional thyroid, what should we be asking? What are some of the questions we should be asking? Because typically it's just test TSH. A lot of integrative, you'll do testing, and that's kind of the FIREMAN approach, just give medications to try and bring down TSH as long as the number look good, okay, we're good. TSH, T4 free, T3 totals, you know, integrative approach sometimes. This is what we should be asking. Why? So we should be asking what is happening to the body, because once we see what's going on, what is going on, then we can figure out and start working on why. You can ask what is going on. Most of the time patients can tell you what's going on. Then we got to figure out and dive in deep to figure out why it's going on. Because if we don't address why the body is not working properly, other things in the body will start to begin to malfunction as well. Does that make sense? Hence, further disease process progression. So we should always be asking why? What caused it? How do we fix it? So we'll skip over that one when we get back to it. Y'all want me to go through like the entire like pathway? Like you want to, Like you get hypothalamus, that's TSH releasing hormone, so it goes through. There's a whole array of feedback loops on your body regulating that, hence why with medication it's up and down. It's always this major balancing act because every second of every day your body, if working properly, is doing that balancing act for you, and that's where we would want to get a patient to. So, you know, healthcare models, you know, the reality is it's like the firemen. Thank God, I always say the easiest example is, again, like a blood pressure. Blood pressure skyrockets way up there. You know what, before you stroke out here in the next hour or two, get that down with the medication if you have to. But then I say we should literally say, we're going to give you a month's supply. We want you to be seeking the care of, you know, it's kind of like, because firemen come in, they put out the fire, but then your house looks like that.
Yeah.
So now who do you have to call?
My husband.
Are you, your husband.
No, he does.
Yeah, right? So he knows what to do. You call the carpenter.
Yep.
The reality is the fireman's like, all right, we hose down the fire. It's all out. You're not dying of a stroke. You're not like, you know, having all these issues that hypothyroidism would cause. So we got it put out. But now you should be asking, okay, how do we need to, how do we rebuild now? And carpenter would probably come in and be like, good golly, this is a mess. Firemen are walking away like, I did my job. Look at that. That fire's out. We're good to go. Now, would you call the firemen, come back every month and be like, hey, can you spray my house down just so it never happens again? Does that make any sense?
No.
We need to kind of think of health the same way, is there's a place for the firemen, and we need to start calling more carpenters to help people rebuild their systems. Get rid of the root causes, okay? Very simple test you could do, just testing your temperature. You know, I'll get to some articles that talk about this too. Very simple tests at home. Ideally, the body should be above 97.9 degrees, you know, around that average there of 98.6. It's a very simple test each morning before you get out of bed, before you move at all, really test your temperature. We don't even, I take that back actually, my wife and I have the lady comp. You know what those things are? You're supposed to take your temperature before the woman gets out of bed so that, you know, whether pregnant, red light, green light, blue light, or whatever, green light, yellow light. I don't even know because we didn't really use it. Three kids in 5 years, so. That's the only thermometer we have. We don't know the thermometer because we know when the body has a fever. That's another thing is, oh gosh, that could give me a whole other rabbit hole. But the reality is, if you have a thermometer, stop checking with fevers. Check your temperature if you're thinking you may have hypothyroidism. So metabolism, if your body temperature, if you're extremely cold, that type of thing, thermal dysregulation, or you're on the consistently hotter side. You don't have a fever, you know your body's not fighting off an infection, but you're constantly on the hotter end. That could mean something like Graves' disease, hyperthyroidism. But checking temperature in the morning is a very, very simple test, and they say it's extremely accurate for knowing whether the thyroid is functioning poorly, okay? So here are the 4 questions. Production, do you make enough? And again, that's where like a synthetic hormone would actually work. Conversion, does your body convert T4 to T3? If it doesn't convert, you could take all the T4 synthetic hormone you would ever be able to swallow, and it's never doing what your body needs to do if it can't convert that. And there's testing you can do to see if it's converting it. Destruction, is there destruction taking place? And then that is Hashimoto's, that is the thyroid being attacked by the immune system, and that is an immune system issue, that is not a thyroid issue. So ultimately the key to healing somebody in that situation, or the person finding healing, is getting to the root cause of what's triggering that immune system, what is driving that immune system up. So interference, and that can be spinal or other toxins. So toxins in the body, things that bind to cell receptors that are similar to a thyroid hormone. This is, again, the labs, and you guys can I can get copies of this so you don't have to write it all down if you don't want to, but these are the labs. So this would be the lab that we would order. TSH, T3, T4, free T3, free T4, resin T3 uptake, cortisol, so we check the adrenals, TBG, antithyroid antibodies, all those, thyroid peroxidase antibodies, reverse T3, ferritin, and then your D level because, again, immune system, knowing that. And you need vitamin D to be able to convert and make thyroid hormones. So some of the underlying factors that could inhibit production and things, proper production of thyroid hormones, stress, infection, trauma, radiation, medications, fluoride, antagonist to iodine, bromide, and chlorine. So what do we have in our water? So hot tubs and things like that, public swimming pools, pesticides, mercury, cadmium, lead. And lead is very mixed on the research. And actually, cadmium could actually promote excessive thyroid function. So it can cause a dysfunction. Meanwhile, like fluoride or mercury, that inhibits and that typically lowers thyroid hormone. So sodium, yeah, you need sodium, lacking of it. Leaky gut, vitamin mineral deficiencies, selenium, tyrosine, things like that. You've got factors that increase conversion of T4 to T3, selenium, iron, zinc, glutathione, so liver function. What's your best way to increase your glutathione? Your body produces this and makes this antioxidant. The body's, they want to say that it's one of the, or the strongest antioxidant your body produces. Okay, an antioxidant is like gobbles up free radicals, stops oxidative stress, helps heal tissues, helps protect tissues, and helps the body detoxify. Isn't that a darn good thing, like all those things I just mentioned? Wouldn't it be good for everybody to like, okay, how do I increase glutathione? Because I want to increase all those things Dr. Brown just talked about, just said. So what increases glutathione? Cruciferous vegetables. Now, how many of you are thinking cruciferous vegetables? But what about all those goitrogenic foods? Oh boy. I'll tell you, I kind of say, like, I understand goitrogenic foods could slow thyroid production, could slow that, but ultimately if we're seeking the underlying cause, it's not like we have to be on these. We could eat those foods and not have a problem. Because those foods are not going to cause, you'd have to eat a ton of kale, you'd have to a ton of these goitrogenic foods to cause the thyroid issue. And then when you're eating McDonald's, you wouldn't have a thyroid issue. You get me? Yeah. So it's not really those foods are the cause. Those foods could cause insult to injury if there's some other factors that are causing the decreased function or output of the thyroid. But I'm like, you know what? I'd rather get the body toxin, the liver functioning better. Once the liver's functioning better, then we increase conversion, and then we take care of the problem, and then it doesn't matter. Those foods are actually very, very beneficial, and that's the best way to do it. So, and obviously all of these things, I'm not like, hey, supplement with these, because this is my core philosophy, is there are times people do, I'm not big on it. I'm more like, let's just look up the list of selenium-rich foods. Let's just look up the list of zinc-rich foods. Let's just look up the list of iron-rich foods. Let's look at what foods produce glutathione, because there's a lot of controversy, and there are isolated supplements that I've used and people use often that do help. But that's kind of like the in-between. I say, I'd rather be able to say, this is what we need to do nutritionally to increase all those things so you don't even have to supplement with them.
Right.
So that's my philosophy. That's where I like to take patients. There are patients that select to say, hey, let's just do that. Let's take some isolated nutrient supplement just to get those up really quickly just because I want to feel better now or as quick as I possibly can. But this is not like, hey, take this. This is not the talk. It's like, take this, and you're all going to feel good.
Right.
Because how many of you Googled and been like, food's good for the thyroid, supplements good for the thyroid? How many of you raise a hands that have done that? And been like, and you've like, I'll try this, I'll try that, and I'll try. You're laughing. Like, why are you here then? If that Google has told you everything you needed to do, right?
Right.
Because it leaves a lot of people like just frustrated.
Yeah.
Because it's like, all right. So factors that improve cellular sensitivity to thyroid hormones: vitamin A, exercise, zinc, balance hormones, balance other hormones. Okay, detox, and that's liver function. You know, really. But again, detox could be liver function, and then it could be removing mercury from the body, you know, those other things. Factors that contribute to proper production of thyroid hormones, again, all those nutrients. And again, these are nutrients that are kind of like, we know of because science studies these macronutrients. Right. There is so much in nutrition, we have no clue. You know, when you study the capabilities of vitamin C for benefit to your body, you could take thousands of milligrams of vitamin C and then you could eat an orange that has a fraction of a percentage of that 1,000 milligrams, and yet the orange did you better.
Yeah.
They really, there's synergy in whole food things. So, and that's why I actually like, for patients that have been with me for a while, joining the wellness way, one of the easiest ways that I did it, like literally had friends sit down with dinner with me and my wife, and they literally like, okay, so you would love this. You're doing the wild doc thing, and you want to take people out in the wilderness and be able to show them, here's the medicine that God created for you. Like, that's one of the things I would love to like end all my videos and like talk about mushrooms and talk about, you know, medicinal plants and be able to say, you know, for you suffering with depression, for you suffering with hypothyroidism, you know what, I want you to learn what God created for you to heal. I want you to get out in the wild, I want you to get out in nature and find what Father Nature, I like to say it that way, it's not Mother Nature, it's actually Father Nature who created all that. So our Father did that, He wants you to heal. And that kind of, to me, kind of then I can go back and say the Bible was true all along. He provided everything we needed to get well, and they're like, you would love it. They use almost primarily herbs. It's huge, and the herb, you know, thing is just, you know, that's like the next big thing in medicine, it seems, or healthcare. Natural is looking at herbs, because we're kind of at the point where we're starting to learn that isolated nutrient supplements aren't the answer. Because there are a lot of people that are getting nutrient deficiencies tested, and they're deficient in magnesium, and they take magnesium, but they're not figuring out why all the stress is there that is driving the magnesium down. And they're using excessive amounts of magnesium when their diet should be plenty of magnesium, but it's just being depleted because there's other stressors. Right. And it's just not stress of emotional stress. It's stressors is it's one term for many, many different things. There's physical, there's trauma, there's toxins, there's nutritional deficiencies that would cause stress in the body. But in the end, I always say nutritional stress shouldn't be a stressor on anybody, because we should all be eating, you know, God-made food, real food. Right. So factors that increase conversion of T4 to reverse T3, factors that increase it can stress, actually, trauma, low-calorie diet, inflammation. Well, I mean, I think it inhibits. Well, that may not be the right terminology. Toxins, infections, liver, kidney dysfunction, again, because it's converted in the liver. Certain medications, even vaccinations can as well. So they have seen thyroid inflammation following vaccinations as well. So I know that may be a surprise to some people, but that's an issue we need to address, because it stimulates, especially puncture wounds, stimulate an autoimmune type response to the body, because the body's got to go into overdrive really quickly, because it's like behind enemy lines, so get out the napalm and do as best you can to clear it as quick as possible. So it stimulates a different type of immune response. So tyrosine, an essential amino acid the body would need. It's actually a non-essential, but you can actually get it. You want to get it through your food. Iodine, now there is big controversy. How many of you read? Raise your hands again. Like, iodine is either good or it's bad. It's like you see both out there. So can you make thyroid hormone without iodine? No, it's impossible. You have to have iodine. So tell me again how iodine is harmful. Do you get that? Like, that's the simplest question I think any person should ask. If something has to be there for your body to do something, could that one thing be bad for you? No. So, yeah. Yes, and that's where, yep. And that's just like anything else. And that's where, like, maybe it's liver issue, and that's why it's driving that iodine way up there. So, yep. So that's where, like, if you needed to, we could do into testing and then test iodine levels as well. So you can also do a very simple kind of test and take, like, that iodine they have for disinfecting and put that on your skin, maybe on the inside of your arm, and it'll turn it kind of a yellowish color. And then if it disappears really quickly, you're probably deficient in iodine. If it stays there for a really long time, it's a fairly decent indication that you probably have higher iodine levels, and iodine deficiency isn't the issue, or that you have excess iodine if it's like it stains there and leaves you with a tattoo for a couple months, you know. So simple kind of real quick test. But again, your body converts these. These are the molecular structures. So one of those, so basically two iodines. So you have these, you have those two molecules, they combine, and that is what gives us T4, again, because I believe the green are the tyrosine, and again, I'm like biochemistry. That was one of the hardest classes, but you know, ultimately this is what the body does. I'm glad that God designed the body to be able to do that without me having to know where all the H's go and O's go, and then being like, okay, your O's in the wrong spot, so I got to do this to get your O over here. So thank God. So, and then it's got to remove one of those to be able to create T3. So, and you have to have iodine, you have to have tyrosine, you have to have vitamin D, you have to have or selenium. So there's a lot of things you have to have. Non-essential amino acids, the word tyrosine is a Greek word tyros, meaning cheese, yet you don't have to get it from cheese. And that is, again, where it's like when we mentioned where these things were discovered, you know, even though this chemist found it in cheese, it doesn't mean that's the only place it comes from. There are a lot of animal-based things because a lot of minerals and different amino acids are there rich in proteins. But if you're going to, what do I preach all the time and tell people? If you're going to eat animal products, what do you need to do?
Grass-fed.
Yes. I say it's got to be, hopefully it's living a life that God would want that animal to live before it is sacrificed for us to live. So, so these things, wild caught, free range, ethically raised, that type of thing. Like my donkey and 2 pigs. Anybody know that we had a donkey and 2 pigs? And literally, I'm so upset with them right now. They ate the entire deer feeder. So they ate it out. Like as soon as I put that thing up at the end of the season, like they have, Beverly's probably laughing. I'm like, every morning I wake up and I'm like, get the binoculars out. I'm like, I want to see some deer. What lived through the season? And I'm looking out there. There's a donkey out there eating in the deer feeder and 2 pigs underneath the deer, because the deer feeder's like this high off the ground, so the donkey gets in there and plucks out all the feed, and then it literally, so then the 2 pigs walk up and they've got like, their hair is just caked in feed. So I'm like, I've got to relocate that deer feeder. Where was I going with that? Anyways, there's the ADHD. But what's that?
You're going to eat them.
Yeah, I'm going to eat them even though they're pets. I'm like, iodine deficiencies, again, so you got a lot of your seafood, but again, they get it from, where does the seafood become high in that stuff? Because they're eating kelp. And so it's higher up in the food chain. They're ultimately consuming. You are what you ate and you are what they ate. So that's the way it works. Cranberries, strawberries, eggs, turkey, prunes. So again, looking at more of those fruits. You may have to look down the charts to find the fruits or the vegetables that are higher in those things, but I highly encourage you to do that. I'm very big on saying that I believe people should be eating more of like a 90-10 or 95-5 diet, meaning about 90% should be fruits, vegetables, berries, nuts, seeds, and then about 10% be animal products. We should not be eating, the steak and then a small potato, and then we leave half the potato and we ate all the steak. Don't forget the A1 sauce. At least that's the way I grew up back in the day with my dad. It's like. So, quick question here again is, what is the leading cause of death in young women? So this kind of transfers us into another aspect of why some people are dealing with thyroid issues. What's the leading cause of death in this age group? 20s to 40s.
Usually for women in general,
Mm-hmm.
heart disease, but age 20 to 40.
And you say heart disease, but what causes heart disease?
Well, yeah.
If you look down,
Other deficiencies.
yes, other issues.
That have been left
So
on-
if you go to the CDC's website and you're thinking critically here, and I want you guys to think critically always, the leading causes of death: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions. One of the top 10 leading killers of women in the 20s to 40s is autoimmune conditions. But is autoimmunity a leading cause of death? Listed as quote unquote the causes of death by the CDC. It's not. Think about it. So we list literally the organ that failed, that finally failed, and it failed because of what? Do you get that?
Yeah.
Like the leading causes of death are not the leading causes of death. They're just the organ system that finally failed after something caused it to fail.
Absolutely right.
So we really distract with the way we look at health conditions in America, the way we talk about the leading causes of death. We distract from the true causes.
Yeah.
What does autoimmunity do to the body? it doesn't just attack one tissue. There is a lot of repercussions that are taking place in the body, a lot of other damage going on in the body. Even if the thyroid is the primary one, most people who develop one autoimmune condition are highly likely to develop another autoimmune condition. How many people have Hashimoto's and then they have skin rashes constantly? They feel inflammation, they feel achy joints. They have a lot of these other symptoms of excess inflammation because the immune system is in overdrive. And that inflammation could lead to, well, the heart. If that's the weakest area of the body, the heart could be the final straw. The heart attack, list of death, heart disease.
Right.
But if we would have figured out in their 20s or 17 years old, maybe, what was causing the original issue that they came to seek help. So triggering the immune system, and again, those testing, TPO, thyroglobulin antibodies, and thyroid stimulating hormone antibodies. So you look at these things and you know whether that's going on, but then the question is, what is stimulating? What is causing that? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And again, I mean, the simplistic way of saying it is, you know, anything that's going to trigger the immune system, allergies, anything that's going to trigger the immune system, maybe biotoxins, mold, maybe a infection. There's that some patients will find mono, an active mono, never discovered, but that's just sitting there. I call it a smoldering infection, where the body doesn't have that cellular immune system that's able to pinpoint, be specific, go in, kill the bad guys, get rid of them.
Yeah.
So it's a weak immune system, but then it's like the backup system for the immune system when it can't clear something is just like, okay, just cause a bunch of inflammation and hopefully just blanketing the body with napalm, as I call it.
Yeah.
That immune response. But then these infections, viral infections, can hide in tissues and just stay there.
So
And
you're
it's just
saying they
smoldering infection is kind of what I call it. What's that?
Mono can lay dormant. Is
Yeah,
basically what you're
mono
saying.
can lay dormant, and then it can be active, actually,
But you don't know about it.
but nobody's testing for it, maybe.
Right.
So viral panels may be necessary.
Gotcha.
So like when you look at like autoimmunity, you again testing and stuff like that for thyroid antibodies, and these are pre and post on the patient. So the first testing, that's just, so going from like here, so the thyroglobulin antibodies, the immune system producing this much antibody against it, so the body's producing those antibodies at these levels, and then we go to here. Anybody get tired, fatigued, and worn out when you're fighting an infection, the cold or the flu? Okay, so if your immune system is having to produce all of this, you want to know why people are chronically fatigued and tired all the time. Their immune system is working in overdrive. And it's harming other tissues, but that immune system is taking and draining a lot of energy from the body. So if we can lessen it, we may not get perfect just that quick, but the reality is that's a lot more energy that can be put over into other systems, allowing you to actually enjoy life. So nutrition, stress, heavy metal blockers. So these are like interferences, mold, biotoxins that would stimulate the immune system. Food allergies, stimulating the immune system as well. Viral load, GI issues, immune system issues, and other regards. So needing to get rid of things that would interfere. Iodine. Blocked by halogens. So basically, if you look in this column right here, so chlorine, bromine, iodine, don't want to even pronounce all those, fluorine. So if you look at these things are similar in their structure. So bromine, chlorine can actually attach to cell receptors like iodine and take the place and block the ability for the body to use iodine properly. Where can you find bromine? Where we used to find chlorine a lot, now they're using what? Those bromine tablets in like hot tubs and swimming pools. But also bromine, you can find that in baked goods.
Yeah.
So you can be consuming and eating that. So if you're eating that stuff, you're ultimately interfering with the production of the thyroid hormones. Fluoride, so Teflon-coated nonstick pans. Luckily, they're finally saying here in the last year, they're saying that they're going to phase that stuff out, even in the United States. Love that. Prozac, Paxil, some of the other SSRIs, antidepressants, antacids, antibiotics, antihistamines can all contain fluorine or fluoride. So those things can cause problems. So there's natural antihistamines. Blueberries are strong natural antihistamine. It's probably my go-to on lower level kind of immune system inflammation, hives, breakouts, stuff like that. Why am I blanking on the name, but it's actually over there in the A's. Albizia is a really good antihistamine herb to use, but blueberries are really good for antihistamine as well. So a cup of blueberries every single day if we're dealing with histamine reactions.
And they're yummy.
Yes. The wild blueberries, you know, the wild caught. No, I'm kidding. Wineries use fluoride-based pesticides in their organic wines. So, I mean, I always laugh when it's like, so this is what they have to do when they spray that stuff on the things that we're going to consume, and society thinks that's okay. Fluoride drug facts, it's like drug facts. You're actually being drugged here in Clarksville. Yeah. If you swallow it. If you swallow your toothpaste, we put it in the water. It's supposed to help your teeth, which you actually read fluoride in the dental office. It says for topical use only. They put that suction thing in there. Yep. They don't want you to swallow it. Like, do not swallow this. Yeah. We used to swish those things around in school. I'm like, yeah, good golly. Nowadays, so it's a drug. You're being drugged without you're supposed to, anytime you're given a drug, it's actually illegal. Like, FDA has not approved that for a drug use. Topical use, yes, but for oral administration, it is not a legal FDA-approved drug. You look at The Lancet here recently, published a research article on it lowers IQ of children. It lowers their IQ. And to me, I just say, we should all just ask a very simple question. And we're not even talking about thyroid issues, but it causes thyroid issues as well. So how many women are dealing with thyroid issues? So if we said, if we have a certain percentage, maybe it's 5% of all the thyroid issues in Clarksville, I'm like, what are the health ramifications? What is the financial cost of that health issue caused by fluoride consumption when it shouldn't be consumed? It should be topically used by all technicalities versus teeth issues that this fluoride supposedly protects against. Let's weigh the benefits and risks. And then let's say, what is the value of a child's brain in IQ? It is 100% proven fact. It is like, Lance says, like, there is without a shadow of doubt, this is causing brain damage to children. Lowered IQ. Some people are like, it's lowered IQ, it's not brain damage. I'm like, listen, that sounds like brain damage to me. My child's brain isn't working as best as it possibly could if I let them consume that stuff. So what's the value of a child's mind? I'm like, I can get a false set of teeth. Like, I would rather be like, I want my children to be as smart and capable mentally as they possibly can, and I'll buy them a set of false teeth if you want to weigh the benefits and risks. Yeah. I'm still looking for a false brain, And I'm a chiropractor, so you can get a false set of teeth, you can't get a false spine. There's only a couple things that you cannot transplant in the body, and it's like the nervous system, the spine, yeah. And that is not coffee stains, that is fluorosis. That is, it killed teeth, it kills teeth, and it's well established. Why did they have the scrubbers in fertilizer plants that produce fertilizer, and then they used to allow the smokestacks to off-gas the fluoride into the environment, the surrounding environment? Do you know what took place in the surrounding environment, and what legislation and laws had to be passed by the EPA and different organizations to actually get scrubbers to filter out the fluoride and collect the fluoride so it didn't go into the surrounding environment? What took place? Look it up. Fluorosis in animals. So it's like Florida had it really bad before they had these scrubbers. It killed plant life, and it also killed animals. But how did it kill the animals? No, they lost all their teeth. It killed their teeth. Cows, all their teeth would fall out. And then they'd starve to death because of severe fluorosis from eating the plants, and then the fluoride built up in their system and then killed their teeth, and then the teeth fell out. So it kills. It may harden the external portion, but I'm more worried about what's internally going on. So it's completely ridiculous. It's one of those things that we need to stop. And again, if you look at all those different halides, so brominated flour called potassium bromate. So So this is where you may know what's in the things you're eating in flour and dough. It's a conditioner, methyl bromide, pesticides, Mountain Dew, Gatorade, Sun Drop, Squirt, Fresca, you know, all those things I don't drink anymore. Medications such as, I don't even know that one, inhalers though, nasal sprays, all these things for ulcers, anesthesia agents, which again, that may be necessary for a period of time. I mean, nowadays I'm like, maybe I could have just done the tourniquet and just wait till it goes numb, like you sleep on your arm, and then let them do the surgery and then take the tourniquet off. I don't know, might have been a lot more pain than I was in the first place. But fire retardants, so carpets, upholsteries, mattresses, things like that. So we're really going to be surrounded by a level of toxins that we're just going to have to improve the body systems, be able to remove or deal with those things. But those are issues, and there's some on this list that you can ultimately figure out how to do away with. So don't. Anyways, house water, drinking water, swimming pools, other sources, mercury, amalgam fillings. I took the video out of here because it's like 10-minute video, but anybody watch the video Smoking Teeth? It was actually I don't know if it's Lexington or University of Kentucky, I think it may have been, but some university professors and scientists actually doing some of the studies on the smoking tooth. If you look up in YouTube the smoking tooth, you'll watch the video. They have all the research references and things like that for you to know that those are bad news. They're 50% mercury by weight, and they do leach mercury. And when you drink hot teas, if you have those in your mouth, it's like everything we could possibly do to reduce your mercury burden is like, don't brush your teeth, because as you scrub, it produces off-gassing. Even they literally take an old tooth, scrub it with the toothbrush. That's all they do, and then in a light that will show mercury vapors, they literally show the mercury vapors coming off the tooth. Yeah. So heating it, so when you drink hot coffee, when you drink hot teas, things like that. And guess where mercury wants to go?
Yeah.
Fat tissue. And what's a gland? A lot of fat. So there's a lot of fat. There's lipids, bilayers, and there's a lot of, yeah. No, I'm not saying that. But it'll go, not the double chin. But mercury is going to go to organs and glands or fat tissue to be stored, and it has a prevalence to uptake into high lipid organ systems like the thyroid. So it goes into those. So ultimately, for best case scenario, people have the $10,000, $15,000 sometimes it takes to get those things removed.
Right.
You know, and you got to do it right. Like there's even you don't cross the central line of the body. I had a patient had severe autoimmune condition. He went in, and one of the local natural docs who helped him a lot, but then made a mistake because he said, "Oh my God, those things are horrible for you, and you should get those out." And he did exactly what his doctor said because he had the money, and he went right out, had those things removed all at one time, and crashed. I mean, hardcore crashed. And because I asked him, "Hey, do you have any mercury fillings?" He's like, "No, I got those removed." And I'm like, "Cool, good. Let me ask you, how'd you get them removed?" He's like, "Well, my doc said those were bad for me and I needed to get them removed, and as a natural physician, so I went out and scheduled an appointment, got them all removed." And I'm like, "And you got worse, didn't you?" And he goes, "Yes, I got a lot worse." You drill those things out, they literally are supposed to be pulling, it should be reverse pressure, pushing air out of the room so that it removes as much of that mercury vapor. I mean, why is Mad Hatter's disease, now it's Mad Dentist disease? Mercury poisoning and issues and suicide and dementia is one of the highest professions is dentistry. What are they working with all day long, those mercury fillings? You know, and if you cremate a body, you cannot cremate them with those fillings, and you're supposed to pull them before you cremate the body. Why? Because they don't have scrubbers in their smokestacks after the body is smoking out. Yeah. So thyroid hormones in relation to lead, mercury, cadmium exposure. There's a lot of mixed information. If you read this research study on lead, there's a lot of, call it quote unquote positive information, or information confirming that mercury does a lot of damage to the thyroid, and then cadmium may actually stimulate excessive production. So there's different relationships there. So mercury impairs selenium activity, and again, an essential mineral for the production of thyroid hormones. Either stops activity or slows the activity. Thyroid can't function normal without selenium. So it just confirming, like, just look, we got to understand. I hate the shadow because of the pictures, but Epstein-Barr viruses, so this kind of goes back to some of the triggers. So what are some of the triggers? You've got to look for those underlying triggers. So this was a viral panel that was ran on the patient and be able to see. So again, the thyroid panel and then the viral panel and looking at some of those. So the Epstein-Barr virus was active in this individual and hence Hashimoto's. So it was something that needed to be cleared, and then you can use some natural antiviral herbs to clear that stuff, increase the immune system to be able to go after those things. I love like turkey tail, I love like chaga is an amazing antiviral. Honeysuckle, which grows wild around here all the time. There's a lot of information on the anti-influenza properties of honeysuckle. You've got echinacea, which is both antibacterial and antiviral. Some really cool things about the, right now everybody's been getting the cough, you know, and are knowing people that's getting that cough that seems to linger around for a long time. Hopefully nobody took Tamiflu, and sorry if you did, and now I'm telling you the information, but I just got done reading, I want to put out a video on, they did a combination. It talks about echinacea, but when you read the study, it's actually a combination of echinacea and elderberry, and the two combination was actually better than Tamiflu without side effect, except for upset stomach.
I've been doing that, didn't even know that.
Yeah,
I've been
it's
doing
phenomenal.
not Tamiflu,
Yeah.
but the echinacea.
So echinacea is phenomenal for that. And I get the little sniffles because of the cold weather, it seems like. And your body produces that because it's kind of protective, and you produce more mucus to kind of protect against that freezing of your mucosal membranes or drying out of your mucosal membranes. So it's not like I have this cold. It's the cold. Your body's actually doing the right thing. So if you hear me sniffle, I apologize. So circadian rhythms, talking about that, like normal rhythms. So somebody with extremely high cortisol levels. So this person, you would not want to be on the medication if you came back with this, and this is a Dutch test, this is a hormone. So this actually looks at so over a time period, urine. So when you look at your cortisol levels, if it goes up above that, you would not want to be on that thyroid medication because then you're that person with that contraindication to taking T4. And then here you have patients that have the opposite effect. You have patients with a very low, like your cortisol level is supposed to rise in the morning to wake up, wake and arouse, and then fall towards the night. But then this person's complaining of can't fall asleep. Chronically fatigued, body doesn't jump into gear and get started. Adrenals don't kick in during the day. But then at night, for some reason, it goes up a little bit, and all of a sudden. So she's an adrenal failure. So this is just one of those things, if you look on Medscape, like when you look at it, because this is a lot of controversy out there, and if you look at the medical community, they will want to say, there's a lot of medical doctors doing more functional medicine now, so they're doing testing on food allergies. But a lot of times I'll tell a patient, hey, can you get your doctor to do your food allergies? And they'll go and look at the IgE responses. They're checking the peanuts and the eggs and the anaphylactic reactions. So the immediate big time reactions, that's like you swell up. You know, everybody, what is that one with Will Smith and his eyeball like got all swollen shut? So hitch, yes. So that's kind of your IgE responses, and they do test for that too, but it's only a few. Because really what the best thing we can do is, because most people know what causes them to inflame immediately. They can figure that out on their own, or God forbid they figured it out the hard way, you know, because so that test, that's typically what you're going to get paid for through your insurance. The IgG, what we hear all the time, well, it doesn't really cause, that's because it's low level. But if it's going to stimulate, and off of Medscape, think about this, type 2 reactions, cytotoxic, and what does cytotoxic mean? I'll show you in here in a second. Involve immunoglobulin G, IgE responses, or immunoglobulin M, antibodies bound to cell surfaces, antigens with subsequent complement fixation, an example of a drug-induced hemolytic anemia. This would be an IgG response, not an IgE response. So somebody could become anemic because of a medication stimulating an IgG response. They know that for a fact, which is not going to kill the person immediately. Over the long term, it's going to cause a problem. Cytotoxic means toxic to living cells. You think we should know what the body's responding to in a cytotoxic, cell-killing, cell-damaging immune response? And we always said that food allergies are not going to be like, the food allergies aren't like the cause. A few cases, But usually it's like, okay, what caused this person to be allergic to so many foods? Typically it's going to be like leaky gut. But, hey, Rachel or Ashley, grab me a tissue real quick. So the IgG responses, testing for those, it's like stop the dripping of gasoline on the fire. If you can do that, just give me that just in case. Thank you. So if you can stop the dripping of gasoline on the fire, you're going to put the fire out a lot sooner. So this is an example of food test. And I always tell people, like, literally, like, you can get the food test. And I always joke with people, I'm like, we don't test Twinkies on this because you shouldn't be eating. There's a lot of things that we don't test, and that's comical. Every once in a while you get a patient you sit down with, so can I eat like saltine crackers? It's like saltine crackers, they're not on there. I don't see it in red. I don't see, ice cream, is that on the red list? I'm like, no, it's dairy though. But I mean, so you look at somebody, this is kind of a greater degree. The +1, the +3, ultimately +4 is the worst. Weast. I started reading yeast. So +4 would be the worst response or the greatest response, and an IgG response. So again, a cytotoxic, low level, kind of typically like we'll refer to it as a smoldering type of immune response or a latent immune response. So it may not happen immediately, it may be a week later as the immune system revs up, as the body is ingesting that type of protein or I call it ingredient of these foods. So again, like broccoli's on this person's, Brussels sprouts are on this, cabbage. So this then throws another wrench into the situation if we want to use nutrition to increase glutathione. But then I would say, okay, asparagus isn't on the red list. So asparagus is probably one of the best foods to increase glutathione. So I'd go like, okay, lots of asparagus for this patient. So you can still use nutrition. This helps you dial down into what are the good foods for them and make sure that we're not increasing the inflammation in the body via something that we thought was going to be good for the patient. So patient here, cerebral curve, whiplash, you're just looking at some of the testing you would want to do. The effect of acute spinal cord compression injury on thyroid function in rats. Acute spinal cord compression. And acute, that's temporary, really quick, and then let the pressure off. What about somebody who's lost that curvature in the neck? Loss of curve will cause tethering effect on the spinal cord because the spinal canal is a certain length, and the spinal cord lies on the back side when there's a C-shaped curve. So ideally, we want to go towards a C-shaped curve with the spine. Patients that have been under chiropractic care see benefit. I've had this patient, thyroid function improve, so she had Hashimoto's plus hypothyroid, so she had a production issue and she had an autoimmune condition. So through chiropractic, her production went up, so her thyroid hormones got up to normal levels, but then she still had Hashimoto's. So then she had to figure out, and this is before I had the testing, because this was back 2014, I think. In reality, she went through nutritional protocols, allergy testing, stool testing, looking for parasites. Yeast overgrowth was a big thing for her. Getting rid of those things that would stimulate the immune system chronically, driving that immune system. But taking that pressure, because that would cause a pressure. Because if you take a tube and you stretch it, what's going to happen to the tube? It's going to squeeze. It's like a Chinese finger trap. You stretch, you compress. That's spinal cord compression, going back to animal studies, will alterations in thyroid function during acute phase. And again, it can be alterations. It's a difference in tone that is caused to that. It's not just a cut off like stepping on a garden hose. Old way of chiropractic explanation is step on a garden hose, less water out to the garden eventually dies. That's not the same as nerve pressure. That's the example I used to use all the time, and it's still easy for people to understand. It's not like we're lying to people, but it's when you get in neurology, it's like tone. Tickle and pain use the same nerve fibers, so I can get technical on you. Did you know that? Tickle and pain use the same nerve fibers, same wire, in essence. It's how your body interprets the tone. It's the tone of the signal that determines pain or tickle. Okay? So tethering can affect the tone, kind of like almost like a bow string or a guitar string. The tension changes the tone. Okay? So whiplash. I put this out in an article one time locally in a magazine. I had a police officer come in. She's like, I got a really bad accident, and literally like thyroid issues right afterwards. In the peer-reviewed medical literature since when? 1996. How many of y'all were like, I got these thyroid symptoms. They test your thyroid. You have a thyroid issue confirmed maybe. Did they ever say, okay, let's look if you ever had a whiplash injury in your past history, and let's look how we're going to fix that underlying cause. Anybody had that done while you went in? Well, that's because you came here, Carol. But the whiplash and then thyroid issues afterwards, right? Yep. Oh, yeah. Charity. Yep. So it's in there. It's in the literature. And again, another one to confirm that, spinal cord injury, again, thyroid stimulating hormone effects. Removing gluten, that's basically your grains. And there's phytates, phytic acid in seeds and grains that bind to things like selenium, so reduce the absorption. You know, this is just kind of a joke that I still smoke, but I'm careful to buy cigarettes that are gluten-free with no trans fats, you know. Like that's the thing is like you got like the Cheetos that are like gluten-free, no trans fats. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's plastic. Don't be a non-pooper, bloated, constipated. So like women, this like just can't get rid of this. It's not fat there because I can feel the muscle underneath. It's internally, something is causing that swelling. It could be inflammation in the digestive tract. The colon should not go way up there. Like that's almost, like that's up to your diaphragm. It shouldn't be way up there. So there's a lot of inflammation. There's a lot of swelling in there. So if I'm looking at this spine, I'll tell patients like, okay, because I'll sit down with patients and I'll tell them like, we can go through a stepwise process and we can start working on your spine. Because I'll have patients that have scoliosis. So I'm saying, okay, we got lower back misalignment. So we're going to work on the nerves that go. We're going to work on that spine, relieve tension and pressure on those nerves so that the nerves transmit signals better to your reproductive organs or your digestive tract. And we can wait on doing a stool test. If the digestive tract doesn't significantly improve, then let's go to stool test next. Work on the spine, and we can take it in a stepwise process, or if money's not an option, just do everything really quick. We can do the viral now, we can get all of them. This will be a lot of fun for me. We can get all the metal testing, we can get all the food allergies, we can do everything. So it's like you could do everything, because there are clinics, and I've got patients that, you know, have been to other clinics, and they go in, they test everything, because you traveled hundreds of miles, thousands of miles to get that kind of stuff. So you can do all that, or you can say it in a stepwise process, and I always give patients the option to be able to think about everything up front or do it in a stepwise process. And this patient, spine's in good alignment from this direction, so I'm not suspicious really of nerve pressure being primary. So that patient, if we got major digestive issues, but we don't have a lot of misalignment, so I'm going to be like food testing immediately, stool testing immediately for that patient. So leaky gut. The issue with leaky gut these days, the biggest issue we're dealing with is, again, glyphosate, and that's Roundup. Luckily, we're getting lawsuits. You learn enough, Beverly? And we'll talk more. So zonulin, so it's just an indicator of leaky gut. So ultimately, inflammation, autoimmunity, so it's leading to, so literally 2011, you're looking at zonulin, leaky gut indicator being, and that's the intestinal barrier function. It's a measurement of intestinal barrier. You can get that test for like 30-some bucks if you want to just do that. Typically, it's like we're going to do it because how many of you have ate GMO stuff, grains that weren't organic and weren't labeled non-GMO? Raise your hands if you've done that. So you've been exposed to something. What are they studying? Why bees dying off and those things, glyphosate exposure, what does it do? And even what does it do to bugs? It causes literally like leaky gut in the bugs. It causes like their intestines to tear apart. So what does it do to us? Luckily, we're a bigger animal and we get to survive it, but we don't thrive on it. And it causes that. So healing that leaky gut, ultimately, if we were able to get more soil-based probiotics and get actually soil, I say if we had healthy soil, we could actually get soil into our diet. You know, eating dirt, if it was not contaminated, would actually be very beneficial for us. We should go out to our garden, we should go out to the tree and pull the apple off the tree and eat it right then and there. We shouldn't be chlorinating it and sanitizing it and then eating it. So I really try to do that all the time, but then I've got to do testing like, so just leaky gut stimulation, inflammation, leaky gut, or destroying your good bacteria. This is actually off of my latest stool test. Decent bacteria. I was low in some, but I had, like, literally I was joking around with a buddy of mine, and I'm like, look at all these commensal. I'm like, I got crazy. Like, so this isn't indicated of, like, pathogenic, harmful, but it's kind of in the between that they haven't discovered scientifically if it's extremely beneficial or if it's indicated as something that would be harmful. It's just kind of like, we don't really know. So, but I'm like, wow. He was like, I've never seen somebody with so many commensal bacteria. I'm like, I guess it's me going out in the woods and eating things right off the tree bark, you know. But then I had so then he's like, of course the wild doc would have a parasite. So I'm like, yeah, I'd clean that up. So made my own, for parasites, and I would almost recommend this yearly because we are going to be exposed to parasites on a regular basis. And they're very hard to sample for if they're not active, you're not going to find it in the stool sample. So the reality is, it's like you can do all the immune phase testing and things like that so that hopefully they're more active, and then you find it in the stool. But black walnut hull, anybody got black walnut trees around you? Yeah, black walnut hull extract is one of the best things. It's one of the most anti-parasitic things you can consume. So you can literally make your own. So I take black walnut, put them in a mason jar, fill it up with vodka, and then have a party. It's an anti-parasite party. But literally taking a tincture of that and like getting drunk off of black walnut hull. But the reality is you take that and you just soak those black walnuts, and then you just have this dark, it almost looks black in the jar when you take it out into a spoon, like you can see the green in it, such a dark green. And then taking that elixir. So you can make that yourself each year and kind of do a yearly parasite cleanse with that. Wormwood, and the combination of wormwood and black walnut is probably one of the best anti-parasite mixtures there. So killing that kind of stuff off. And this is kind of going back to like what could be triggering the immune system. Again, is there an underlying infection? Or is the immune system lacking in really good bacteria? So if somebody's really, really weak, didn't have a lot over here, and they'll put it as no growth. And I had all the good bacteria they're testing for, had all of them, but one of them was like on a +1, so I'm taking a probiotic to supplement that, get that back into my gut, hopefully reseed that intestinal tract and get it to grow a little bit better. But a bunch of commensal, if we've seen some dysbiotic over here, anything in red, this lab will actually test certain herbs against it. So they will test to see if black walnut hull, if berberine from golden seal, or if grapefruit seed extract. It'll test those things, literally drip those herbs on there and say, okay, this herb is going to kill that bad bacteria, so we know what to give that patient so we have an effective herbal medicine to get rid of something that was in this bad range. And then we know the anti-parasitic herbs to use there. So that's kind of more towards your seeing if the immune system, Hashimoto's, those types of things. So, and this is the opportunity for everybody tonight. If anybody wants to go through with testing, you can get the food allergy testing, $250, $225 goes to the lab. We only get $25 for shipping and handling. No, it's not really shipping and handling, but ultimately that goes to keep my office open, really, just to pay Rachel for her time. But the reality is that is going to, it's red. You already saw one. Don't eat the red, eat the blue. Simple as that. You don't need any more coaching on that. If you want help, I can help you. Just don't eat it. Don't pay me for it. Don't eat the red, eat the blue. Okay? Consultation, that would be $350 value. Prior testing, we can go over that with you. We can do recommended additional testing, examine x-rays. And if you're a patient that already kind of like started care, Tammy, I'm kind of pointing you out here, that so now I'm giving a discount, and now you're like one of those shoppers that, I just bought that and it went on sale. I'll help you. We'll do something nice for you, okay? We'll do a little discount there. I always feel bad about that when I do a talk like and a patient just started and they just got the labs and they know that it's going to cost like $250 for a test result read, and they already did their x-rays and they're like, so I could have paid $100 for that? Can I return my care that I got last week and get it? All right, so exam, x-rays, those things, so that initial consultation, looking at lab work that you've already had done. We can look at the incomplete lab work if we need to, want to. No, that's typically what we have to do. Take action and get your life back. That's what you get. So, and if anybody has businesses or other things, I'm putting myself out there. We want lunch and learns. I'm trying to get more active in the community. So you can call me in to rant and rave there if you'd like.